it starts with having a really good team and learning how to find good people. And good people in retail game stores is not the same as good people in other retail environments. So we hire people. The two biggest things we look for is kindness and obsessiveness. So those are the two key indicators. Like, the people that we hire have to have the ability to be kind in every possible scenario, and put that first above all else, whether they're customer facing or not. Like, that has to be first and foremost. And then we used to hire people based on work ethic, and we look at kindness, and that changed. And its work ethic is important, but we prioritize obsessiveness above that. And what I mean by that is we hire people that are obsessed with one of the games that we support.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Match the Podcast. My name is Frank. I'm the host of the show. And on today's episode, we're talking to Travis. He is the owner of Kingslayer Games out in California. He has 3 locations, which we'll get a little bit more into as we get into the discussion. If you haven't already learned about the podcast, we're not only available in just audio, but now you can watch us on YouTube if you haven't already. Subscribe there. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Travis onto the show. Travis, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on. So Travis, before we get into like the nitty gritty of your store, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your relationship with gaming, what eventually made you make the plunge into starting a game store.
Yeah, I've always played video games, my whole life. I'm 37, and I was really into that from as a kid, and I had some exposure to cards when I was growing up in junior high. I had like a Pokemon binder, and I knew what Magic cards were, but I'd never played a game before. And then my career went into business and in sales. So I went to school for business, and that was most of what I'd been kind of like training through and training with, and that was in outside sales with Fortune 500 companies, and my growth path was in that. But I really, in the back of my mind, was always doing side hustles or startups and trying different gigs. And this story can be told in kind of different intervals, and maybe your future questions will drill down on like some specifics. But eventually, I started a business doing kind of retail arbitrage and buy sell trade of goods from swap meets and garage sales, that sort of thing, and selling on Amazon and eBay back in 2014. And that is what eventually evolved into having a commercial space to support an online business, which is what eventually evolved into having a retail store, originally a comic book store, to have retail hours. And the purpose of that, and I'm shotgunning through a lot of points, but the purpose of opening up a retail store for me initially in 2015 was to get more products to sell online, to serve the online business that I started. I was doing about $1 million a year gross in 2014 in just online sales of toys, books, Nerf guns, just whatever I could buy and sell and flip on eBay, Amazon. And then that retail store opened the doors to more products. And September 2015, we opened retail, planning to be a comic book store. And within the first week, people were asking to play Magic the Gathering. And I was like, what? I had no idea really what that was, other than I do have a memory of having some Magic cards as a kid, but I'd never played a game, didn't have a DCI number, didn't have any of that stuff. And about 3 weeks later, we hosted our first Magic pre-release, which was Battle for Zendikar. And the rest is history, kind of. So, there's a lot of pivoting still from that point on. But I still had my full-time job. I was in outside sales at UPS at the time, and still had that full-time job for the first 4 years of the company's existence to supplement the growth of starting a card shop. So now we've, from there, we've taken different twists and turns along the way. Now we have 3 locations, one down in Oceanside, which is like northern San Diego County, for those not familiar with this part of the country. And then a store right in between our flagship, which is Fountain Valley, and Oceanside, which is Lake Forest. So 3 stores now, and that's kind of I don't know, maybe like 3 minutes or less, more or less the history of my professional history into cards. But it was not on purpose. I guess it's kind of a fun part of the story. It just kind of happened by accident, somewhat of an accident and luck.
So the comic book store started off the business at that time. Once you brought Magic into it, did you see like a complete increase in terms of sales, in terms of people coming into the store? Did that change a lot?
Yeah, so the comic book store was really a front because I happened to be into comics at the time, and I wasn't going into comics because I thought it. I was into it as a hobby at the time, but it was really I needed a fake retail store to get access to selling goods online. I was one of those like evil online only sellers, basically up to that point, but really for board games and comic books, and was not even I didn't even have trading cards as part of the program, and so it was really the comic book store was a fake store to give us business hours so that distributors would sell us other stuff, and it wasn't even we weren't even TCGs were still not even on the radar at all. It was just other any goods I could find to sell on Amazon and ship on FBA through Prime. I was using the store as a front to get that all in, and because we had to fake it, my brother-in-law and was working with me at the time. Because we had to fake the store, it was like more and more of it was like, well, if we are going to have hours on Yelp and Google, we might as well sell this, and so slowly that evolved. And then when people said, hey, we'll spend money here and buy profitable inventory if you put tables and chairs down, it was like, oh, okay, like maybe we stumbled into something that is lucrative. And then once you fall into that rabbit hole and learn what Magic is, I went to my first Grand Prix a few months later in San Jose, and you walk in a room back when Grand Prix were a little bit better than they are now. You walk into a room and see 5,000 Magic players playing, and you're like, oh, this is bigger than I thought it would. That your world becomes opened up, and yeah, Magic really drove all of our growth in the first 4 or 5 years.
So I definitely want to get into your relationship with Magic as a whole. But if we take a little bit of a step back, going off of the origin of the store, can you talk about a little bit about how the Kingslayer name came to be, when you first
Sure.
decided to start the business, like from its infancy to where you're at now, which is the 3 stores?
Yeah, so it was, if you kind of flash back into 2015, Game of Thrones was at the height of its popularity, and I'm a big hockey guy, so I'm a Ducks fan, so one of the few out there in the world. I'm a big hockey fan. Our rival is the Kings. We absolutely hate the Kings, and the dual nature of Jamie Lannister and being the Kingslayer from Game of Thrones and being a really fan of that franchise, and then hating the Kings, it just felt kind of natural. It's a little cutthroat, it's a little violent, but that was kind of okay. We were okay to deal with the fact that we'll teach our customers that it's important to be kind, and we have really nice staff, and customer service is really important. But so it's a little bit of an aggressive name, I suppose, but it was definitely from a Game of Thrones slash hockey reference, I guess.
As a New York Giants football fan myself, I completely understand the despising of another team. So, very creative idea that you came up with there.
Thanks.
So, your flagship store, do you have your number of employees spread evenly throughout all 3 stores, or is like one have more than the other? And how do you divvy up the responsibilities between the 3?
Yeah, I think that could probably be kind of, again, like that. There could be so a very long-winded answer to that, but really our flagship store, which is Fountain Valley, we have so Andrew Goodwin is my regional sales manager, really like operations manager, and he's worked for me for going on 6 years, and he's kind of like master of product, and he knows how to answer basically every company question possible, and he's kind of my operations manager I go to for everything product based. Each store has a store manager, and they're responsible for managing a lot of the organized play in their store, and then also product receiving to and from, whether it's transfers or from vendors. And but as we grew in the beginning, when you have a startup, and especially in cards or in gaming retail, you start hiring and training people to be be experts at everything. Like everyone you hire, especially that first person, has to learn how to do everything in your business, especially if you're trying to delegate things to them to scale. And then over time, as you grow year over year, you start to train or hire specialists. And so we have this program on our leadership team. We have 19 staff members right now, 3 store managers, an operations manager, and a warehouse manager. So So really 5 people other than me on like our leadership group, and each store manager has an added responsibility. So like our flagship store manager, his name's Anthony. He is our organized play manager for the whole company, which is a lot because we support about, I think currently right now it's 12 or 13 different games that have organized play at all 3 stores. And so each store has to have accounts with each game. So it ends up being, it's like 30 or so different event platforms that we have to schedule to support OP at our stores. So that's on him. And then our Lake Forest store manager, his name is Gabe. He's our kind of our HR or people manager. So he does the schedule for the whole company. So all scheduling requests go through him. And then Austin is our newest store manager in Oceanside, and he's we're kind of adding more responsibility to his plate, and his specialty is kind of continuing to be defined. But we end up you transition away from having everyone needs to know how to do everything to being more efficient by putting specialists on specialized roles on people. And then my other person is a warehouse manager who he does all the shipping and e-com orders and that sort of thing. So you start to be kind of more siloed in how the responsibilities work. And Fountain Valley does have more staff, but mostly because like we started there, so a lot of our specialists are there, and then our attendance volume there is higher than the other newer stores, so it just has more staff in general.
So you definitely have quite the operation going for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot. Payroll went from $5,000 every couple of weeks to I think it's almost $30,000 of payroll every 2 weeks to
oh wow
run this operation, which is terrifying because there's a lot of responsibility and we have to make sure that we're making meaningful, accurate decisions constantly. So that's it can be a lot, but it's worked so far. So I have confidence that the communities and the games will keep growing in the future.
That's good to hear. I mean, the thing I'm thinking about here is compared to, say, a traditional game store. I mean, you have 3 locations. I've talked to a number of game stores. Only, you can count on one hand how many have multiple locations, and you're definitely operating in a higher level to the degree of you have a local game store, but you have this gigantic company that's supporting 3 locations and all that. How difficult is that to maintain? I mean, because I know you alluded to the fact of it's a little terrifying when you factor in payroll and you start thinking about those numbers. How do you manage all of that, and how do you keep that all organized? I mean, I know the employees probably help play a role with that, but for you yourself, in terms of your role and what you have to do, how do you flesh all that out for yourself?
Yeah, I think I have a really good team. So and how we hire people changed a lot about 3 or 4 years ago. We changed how we hire. And your question was more specifically on how I manage it, which I'll kind of get to that. But I think it starts with having a really good team and learning how to find good people. And good people in retail game stores is not the same as good people in other retail environments. So we hire people. The 2 biggest things we look for is kindness and obsessiveness. So those are the 2 key indicators. Like the people that we hire have to have the ability to be kind in every possible scenario and put that first above all else, whether they're customer facing or not. Like that has to be first and foremost. And then we used to hire people based on work ethic, and we look at kindness, and that changed. And its work ethic is important, but we prioritize obsessiveness above that. And what I mean by that is we hire people that are obsessed with one of the games that we support. Or if we're getting into a new game, then we want them to be obsessed with that game. So whether it's Warhammer or Magic or other card games. So first, to get to how I can even potentially peel back all the work and stress on my plate, we've had to slowly over time hire people that are kind and obsessed. And then there's other things we look for too, but those are the 2 main things that get you in the door. And they're amazing. So my team is phenomenal, and that allows me to do everything else. And then for me, I've it's a battle to be able to get tasks done and be focused when there's so many to do in so many places and so many vendor relationships and customer relationships and our Discord. I'm very active in our Discord, and I've got content creation stuff. So it's really easy for me to just get inundated with all the stuff I'm supposed to be doing and the stress and anxiety and all that stuff. And any game store owner or any understands that. And anyone thinking about getting into game stores is probably like, why would I ever want that pain and suffering? But I've learned, I'm learning, and this is like a constant. This is like something I'm actively doing this year. It's just how to have a better system, how to manage your schedule better. So, simple tools like your calendar, your email inbox, and your to-do lists, like working on those every day, whether that's before you go to bed or in the morning, and having a plan. And whenever I have to-do list items or things I know I need to get done, that gets recorded and put onto a to-do list app that I use. And so that's something I look at every morning. And then, before I go to bed, I'm looking at calendar for the next day. And then I used to be terrible at this, and I've actually been really good in the last couple months, is my email inbox. I would constantly have I think all combined email inboxes from personal life and work was up to like 50,000 unread emails or something ridiculous. I was just getting the most spam and junk, worst email inbox of all time. But I cleaned that up, and so it's all like every morning I go through my to-do list, I go through my email inbox, I check my calendar, and then you can you get all that like stress and anxiety, including cash flow. Cash flow is another one of my to-do list items. I go through and make sure all the finances of the company are at a good spot. And that like really resets my like anxiety, stress, depression for the day. And I can say, okay, cool. Let me focus on the stuff I need to focus on and delegate and all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely something I'm working on and not perfect at, but just in the last few months, my like workflow and ability to be organized has gotten a lot better. And I think it's just, if you can work on those three things, which is your to-do list, your calendar, and your email inbox, I feel like once that's all kind of cleared up, and I could go deeper on those. Like the to-do list has very important things I do daily, like cash flow. Like I have a cash flow sheet I go through for the company every day and make sure like, cool, finances look good moving forward, so I can have a clear headspace to tackle like whatever needs to be done today.
So once you're managing like the managerial side of things, the day-to-day aspects of the business, I've also noticed that you have your own YouTube channel, and I know a lot of stores have, their own social media presence for marketing purposes, but you're very engaged with yours. So that's like a dual job for you outside of managing three game stores. You're also doing this other venture for YouTube where, it's essentially using it as a marketing tool. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think my experience with YouTube has been like back when the company was, that's probably in its second year, I did some YouTube stuff and had some success, stuff I've unpublished because it's really hard to watch yourself on video from like 8 years ago. But I had some experience with YouTube. My wife had a channel at one point in time, and that was pretty successful. And so I've understood that medium is really important. And this year, going into this year, I was looking at how to create content in a way that could help the business scale. And I sent out a survey in December to our customers we have a newsletter. I think we have about 7,000 customers on that newsletter for the company. I sent a newsletter out with a survey that said, it was unsolicited, it was solicited, but it wasn't like an enter a giveaway type of survey. It was just, hey, here's a survey. I'd love for you to fill it out. And we had a lot of responses to the survey. And I asked if people wanted content in the form of video or podcast or live stream. And the responses from our community, are like our core customers, was yes, we want content. It's like, okay, I'd done YouTube in the past, and we'd done some streaming in the past for events. And so I considered this year, like, hey, for February, let me just try streaming for a month and see what the customer engagement was. And I had really low expectations, and it was very successful. It's like, okay, interesting. Let's try YouTube again and see how that does. And the first video I made, it got 50,000 views, and I was like, what is this? Like, why does anyone care what I have to say? And so it's like running a game store or any business. I feel like I'm constantly, I think there's a few ways to do it. Some people say like, just put all your eggs in one basket and make that one thing great. And for me, I've had success finding like what the lowest hanging fruit is, or what's the most important thing for me to be doing today or this month. And sometimes this year it's been streaming, sometimes it's been YouTube. And it is a full-time business, and that's where or you could make content creation full-time. And I think for me, it's more like trying to listen to what our customers want, and then YouTube is a little bit different because some of that content ends up being more like business focused, where I feel like your audience on this podcast is, probably a lot of folks that are thinking about starting game stores. And so my content ends up being more like, my specialty is in running game stores, not playing games. And so creating content ends up being kind of weird in this space because what I do day to day is making sure that we have the best customer experience for our customers in the stores as they're playing games. But the thing I know how to do is kind of the business side. So I find I depending on what my goals are for that week or that day, I'll end up squeezing in some YouTube time for that if I can. But it does end up pulling me away from business management stuff. And that, kind of full circle goes back to, if you have a really good team and your cash flow is good and your list is good, then you can kind of make it work. But it's a lot.
I can imagine. It sounds like a lot. I mean, because really, when you think about it, having two full-time jobs in a way can really, start to add up. And I understand completely, where the stress and the anxiety comes from with all that. And then on top of it, you even mentioned the Twitch aspect of things, like with live streaming. What types of things are you doing with that?
Yeah, so that's been, I'm streaming tonight. We have our One Piece event tonight, but for the last couple months, I've been doing One Piece and Lorcana. Those games have been really, really positive for us. And so Tuesday nights we do One Piece currently, and Thursday nights we do Lorcana. And we've done some Pokemon and some other stuff. We'll probably look at doing Flesh and Blood and some of the other games. Magic doesn't translate very well to streaming for us because Commander is the most popular format, and it's kind of hard to do. It's kind of hard to do play-by-play for Commander. But yeah, it really ends up being, and for those store owners out there thinking about streaming, it ends up being a really effective way, especially when we have 3 stores. It's really hard for me to have an experience in each store every week. So by streaming, it allows our customers to pop in and chat with me on Twitch and ask questions. They can, a lot of times, end up asking product related questions like, when's this going to be up for pre-order, or do you have this thing, or hey, I'm watching Lorcana, I know how to play Magic, like how do I play this game? And then we have a program called Squire Training, where it's a free program people can sign up for. We'll teach them how to play in the store. It's like an appointment based system. So Twitch allows me to engage with the customer directly and then really get like live feedback in ways that I can't do that. I can't be in the stores every night. So that's 2 nights a week. That can be it. Because I am live streaming the event, so it's usually like a 2 to 3.5 hour stream. So there's some setup time, and there's a lot of work in managing streaming in that way, and that doesn't work for a lot of store owners, I'm sure. But it does give you this ability to really directly connect. If you had one store location streaming multiple times a week, like it's probably not necessary because you can just be in the store, or maybe you stream from the store sometimes. But multi-location, it really hits this like sweet spot of efficiency for customer engagement for me. But yeah, it's been fun.
I'm curious, Travis, how do you create free time for yourself? Because you're doing all these projects. I was just wondering if you've been able to carve out like any time for yourself with everything that's going on.
It's kind of weird. So I have 3 kids too, by the way. So my oldest is 15 and my youngest turns 9 tomorrow. And so Friday night for us is family night, and I make sure to be home most bedtimes and drive the kids to school every day. My wife's amazing, and then weekend time is really family time as well. But the thing so free time for me, like most years or months since Kingslayer started 9-ish years ago, work is actually my preferred thing to do for fun, which is kind of weird, where, before Kingslayer, and at times if you're kind of bored with work and kind of feeling like you're in a rut, like you want to play some video games or some, go hiking or backpacking or whatever your free time, surf. I surf occasionally. But more often than not, especially when it's fun, which I've been really lucky to be able to work in something that's been a lot of fun for me. I just prefer to work, and my goals are really, really high for myself and where I want to be, and like the type of place I want to live, and how I want to live the rest of my life. And in order to achieve those goals, like I got to work. I have to work a lot, and it's exactly what I want to be doing. And as long as my relationships with my children and my wife are positive and doing well, a lot of times I just kind of prefer to put my nose to the grindstone and just go work more, which is, maybe if people are thinking like, I want to open a game store so I can like make a bunch of money and not work, like that hasn't worked for me. And it's been more the opposite, where especially in those first, 3 to 5 years, 80, 90 hour weeks was just like required in order to make it work. And the benefit is you don't have to answer to anyone. You don't have a 9 to 5 you have to drive to necessarily. And in the long run, we're developing a community of stores that really, our community is phenomenal, and the team is great. So over time, there'll be an off ramp at some point in my career where I transition into a role that isn't as demanding. But right now, we're still like building the company brick by brick, and it's what I love to do.
That's fantastic to hear. I mean, how many stores would you like to see eventually, like, the company hit? Like, do you have a goal in mind? Do you have a whole, like, what are you foreseeing for the future with it?
Yeah, if you asked me a year ago, I would have said 10 or 100. But and I think that, I think that was kind of foolish, and maybe not. Uh, 3 stores is a lot of work. Where two was, and maybe this will change. If you ask me in a year, maybe this answer changes. But right now, I'm really excited about the community building aspect and scaling, e-commerce and our content, and making sure that we're kind of showing off what our stores have done, and what we've built for the last period of time, and making the quality of life for my staff better, and offering more incentives for them to want to stay here long term. We're Since 2 years ago, our staff has full benefits, so they've got medical, vision, and dental, and that's something that was like really unheard of in our industry. Our pay is pretty darn good, for our retail staff too. So it's, all things considered, it's making that better is really important to me. And maybe maybe in 6 months, usually what'll happen is we get to this like plateau of growth, and I kind of run out of stuff to do, and I get kind of bored and go, let's do another store. And that creates more opportunities for other staff members for like leadership positions and stuff. But right now, so much of our scale ends up adding more weight on myself and on Andrew specifically, that adding a 4th store right now this year or even next year, would probably, even if that added $1 million in like gross sales per year to have another location, and maybe like 200 net, like I don't know if that is worth it until I solve some of the other scaling problems that have popped up. So right now I'm focusing on content, e-commerce, and making our store experience better, and then we'll kind of see. There's a point in time where I definitely wanted 10 stores on the West Coast, and maybe I'll solve some of these scaling problems, and we'll do that. But right now it's just kind of enjoying the communities.
That's understandable. And what would you say is the number one scaling problem at the moment that you're trying to sort through?
I knew you were going to ask me that. So I'm doing some kind of through a lead that I got from YouTube. I'm doing some consulting work with the store, and helping them solve some of their problems they're having. It's a newer store, and how to scale. And part of the problem, one of the things that's been really successful for me, is if I get really excited about a game, that I know we have a like growth opportunity, and like we had with Warhammer, and I'm playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Of all things right now. With Warhammer, we could not get it to work in our stores, and the way we got to work is we did a learn to paint in an escalation league, and I jumped in, and I was there every week. I learned how to paint. I was painting on Twitch. I would it was in our Discord talking about new data dumps from Games Workshop about new builds for armies I was building, and it really immersed myself in the community. And when the community is there and like wants growth, and sees the owner jumping in and really getting their hands dirty with scaling the company, there's so much more commitment and buy-in, and it's like it just grows like wildfire. So that is the problem of scale that is really tricky, because if I was to do that, if we just got, say, $10 million of funding and sold the percentage of the company to scale to 10 stores, that would still be a problem. Like how would we do that in a limited period of time, where even if it wasn't just me, if it was our current staff to take them out of their locations and have them go and start new stores, and organize play problems. And every time you open a new store, there's vendor accounts, and it's stuff that doesn't scale very well. And it ends up being like there's a huge benefit to it, because the way product is allocated for games like One Piece and Lorcana, like having multi locations does give you there's a lot of perks there, and there's some value to that. But it'd be hard for our team to continue to have these like organic growth moments in new locations. It's hard to like outsource that part.
Right. I guess it's the fear of almost spreading yourself too thin, right?
Yeah, and you want to have meaningful experiences with the communities, and like that becomes more and more like marginalized, or that pie gets thinner and thinner the more you do that. And you can, I think if you hire the right people that have skin in the game, whether that's like ownership or profit sharing, or really really good pay, or I think there's a way to get that model to work. But there's franchise options, or you can look at other retail industries in the U.S. Like I look at like industry I look at a lot is like the beauty industry, where the margins are a little bit better. But if you look at like a Sephora or an Ulta, and like think about how I look at some of their trajectory and how they scale, I think there's a lot of similarities, because those the beauty industry doesn't by and large have their own brands, whereas same we don't have a lot of like Kingslayer first property items that we sell. It's all resellers. So look at how they scale and how they incentivize and how they pay their managers, and how they do that in a way that's still meaningful to the communities that they serve. And that's the community-based business is just hard to scale, but there are benefits to doing it. So it just depends on like how far you want to go on that route. And I think a lot of the stores that have scaled in the past, the owner is behind a curtain, you never meet him, and he has maybe financing or funding, and he's paying managers to do stuff, and then he kind of makes decisions and no one knows why, and you're like who's this guy? And so I think we're going a different approach, where I want to be available and approachable, and able to get feedback to improve the experience at the same time.
We're going to take a quick break from this podcast to talk about our sponsor, Cardboard Shuffle. Cardboard Shuffle was our 10th podcast interview here at the Match Slip with store owner Mark. Mark has expanded his brand and has produced his own card sleeves called Shuffle Shields. Shuffle Shields come in packs of 100 premium matte card sleeves for standard size trading cards. They contain no PVC and are acid free. I have 17 packs of Shuffle Shields card sleeves to give away to listeners of the podcast and followers of the Match Slip on social media. Requests for a free pack of card sleeves shipped for free to you will be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. To receive your free pack of Shuffle Shields, you'll need to send a screenshot that you're following Cardboard Shuffle on Facebook to frank@thematchslip.com. Good luck, and back to the episode.
You had mentioned, community being a big thing for you too. And with that being said, and, you had mentioned, of all things, you said you started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I was curious, because I know we talked a little bit earlier about Magic. Are you ever going into the store to play like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! With the community at your stores?
Yes. So like last night, we're building our Yu-Gi-Oh! Like one of the things we're building this month is Yu-Gi-Oh! At our Fountain Valley store. We have a community in our Oceanside store, but we've never really tried, honestly, to get it to work at our flagship store. So part of that, solving that problem, was, hey, I'll learn to play. So I started reaching out to community members in our Discord that wanted us to support local play there. And so I've been playing there the last couple weeks. Same thing with One Piece at our Oceanside store. I was down there earlier this month and played in an event down there. Actually, I went to Fountain Valley yesterday to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And they had an odd number. So I dropped from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Event and played Lorcana, and borrowed a deck to hop in there. It's the new, it's the first constructed event we've had with the new set out. So kind of the same thing. And these, by being visible on Discord and social media, and then doing the Twitch streams a couple times a week, a lot of times I don't get to meet the folks in these communities because I'm behind a lens, basically. So hopping in and being able to play is really fun, because people are, I'll get the feedback, oh, I really like that YouTube video, or I love the stream. And like my opponent last night was like, he was like, oh, I watched the match back that you cast a couple weeks ago, and you were saying that I was playing too fast or something. I was like, oh man, I'm really sorry. And he was like, oh, it's all good. You're right. I was playing like way too quickly. And so it creates these like really fun moments with the community when you really immerse yourself. And that's what I was telling this the store that I'm consulting. I was like, have you hopped in and played? Have you hopped in and played Magic yet with your F&M community? Because they were asking like, how do we grow Commander and how do we grow our Magic scene? I was like, you play with them and you hop in, you listen to what they want. And once they see you really invested in the growth of a hobby in your store, like they're going to be invested and they're going to get their friends involved. And at some point you can ease out of that. And then maybe you touch base and play, once a quarter or something. But in the beginning, I've found that we've had like more success if we're more hands-on, at least to start the process.
That's excellent. It's very cool too that you're getting the chance to do that, because I know not every game store owner, once they start the business, they don't have much time to play anymore. So I was wondering what your favorite game is to play at this moment in time, or your favorite game overall.
Yeah, I don't. I don't really have a favorite game. I mean, Magic is kind of like the comfort food in a way, because I can go back and I have a commander deck and I can hop in and play, and it's like the rules of Magic don't really change. Like there's new keywords and that change components of it, but um, yeah, the other every game is really playing One Piece recently has been a lot of fun. I think that game was really well designed, and that there's a lot of decks there, but yeah, I think each card game has its own nuance, and the thing I've been trying to solve with Yu-Gi-Oh specifically is answering like, why is this game fun? Because the text on the card is so small that the game ends on turn 2 or turn 3. Like it seems like there's a lot going on and a lot of format knowledge and things that are difficult, not approachable, and I'm realizing the reason why it's fun is because I'm making relationships with people that are like crazy about the game. Like they're super passionate. They grew up watching the show, or they've been playing it for 10 years, and they usually play like Yu-Gi-Oh and Lorcana, or Yu-Gi-Oh and another game. But the reasons why it's fun is really meeting people and having new experiences in the store, and playing paper cards in store is something that is really unique. And I feel like people that play video games or have not tried that experience before, or that transition into the hobby from like a Hearthstone or from some other digital game, I think they realize like, wow, this is doing something that like the video game experience doesn't do. But I think favorite game outside of cards, I grew up playing like Diablo 2 is probably my favorite game. But I played WoW for a long time, off and on, and so video games in general have been a big part of my history.
Very cool. And how often are you finding yourself like actually going to the stores, not necessarily to play games, but work that you have to do there, or anything you have to oversee? Like between the 3 locations, how often do you have to go in?
I don't really have to go to them really at all, except if it synergizes with my work life balance, I do. But so much of it, we use Slack, which is, if you're not familiar, it's basically like Discord for businesses. So we have a Slack server that all of our entire team is on there, communicating with each other constantly for a variety of different reasons. But I'm in each store at least every other week, and it's usually that I can walk the store and kind of give feedback. But everything is so visible. Like we have cameras in all the stores, and we're constantly communicating. I'm on the phone a lot with the store managers to help solve a variety of issues. But the in-store requirement is so low because I'm so far down on the oh crap, like this person called out, we had the last time I really actually, I think so. This month, I had to work a couple shifts in Oceanside, and then our Fountain Valley store in April. I had an event. I got to work our Lorcana set championship because our store manager was on vacation that week. So that was a lot of fun to be there for. It was like a 44 person Lorcana competitive event. But it ends up being kind of a fill in role more than I need to go to do certain things. So our store managers do a great job of keeping the stores looking clean and the shelves full and all that.
So from a marketing standpoint of the stores, I'm sure they probably all have their own differentiating factors that separate the 3, so that I guess you may, whether or not you're going for a congruent, look for all 3 of them, or something separate for each individual one, to market those stores to their respective areas. What types of approaches are you taking to marketing outside of some of the social media channels we were talking about?
Yeah. So I think Instagram and Facebook advertising is still very undervalued. So the amount that we can spend, and we've actually, if on our Instagram right now, our top 3 pinned posts that we have there's one for each store location, and all 3 of those posts are boosted and being advertised, I think at about a $10 a day rate, which is it's like $900 a month just in that. But I don't run that constantly. We run that for usually a couple weeks, and we'll take it off for a couple weeks. That is really effective at getting people in the doors. And I think if store owners are out there and thinking about advertising, I think there's specific settings that you can set up in the app on Instagram for targeting, where you can select the games people like, the ages, the cities that they live in, and that's been really, really effective. Outside of that, I think we've done Yelp in the past. We did Yelp for a long time, and we just stopped using them this year, and that was kind of a relief. But we used them for a long time to kind of build up your reviews and your reach. And I think there's maybe stores never use Yelp. Maybe I know there's I've been to stores in the Midwest that like have like almost no social media presence, and they're still really busy, and it's kind of blows my mind. But at least in California, there's Southern California has a lot of stores. But right now our marketing spend is actually exclusively Instagram and Facebook, and then for us, Discord is our happy place. Like that's where if people come into our store and they're like, how do I stay connected or get the best news? Join our Discord. I have kind of a complex setup, but it's you join the Discord, you just select the games you care about in the store that you play at, and then like all of your alerts in our server are tailored to the games you care about, and you only get notified if it's something related to a game that you like. But that's Instagram, Facebook, and then that's pretty much it right now.
I always love hearing when stores use Discord. I feel like it's utilized. It seems like it's getting more and more utilized throughout the industry, but to hear it when it's used and it's used as a key communicating tool, I think is a very smart direction. So with that being said, what about Discord is it that you feel has enabled you to help move things forward, whether it be with the business or with communicating with your customers? What key component of Discord do you find to be extremely beneficial from your end?
Yeah, so this I was just having this conversation last week. So there's an onboarding tool in Discord, and there's roles. I think if you have those, the nuances of how to integrate those, and I'm open. Like if anyone has questions and wants like free advice about this, I'm probably going to post a video if I can get to it in the next couple of weeks on Discord setup for a local game store. Like that's something that's on my list to do. When that's going to happen, I'm not quite certain. But if anyone wants to reach out to me directly and ask questions about Discord setup for their store, I'm at this point where I'm offering free advice kind of constantly. So if anyone wants to reach out directly, I can answer a little bit. But essentially, if I would set up a role for every single game in your store, Magic, Pokemon, Lorcana, whatever games you have. And then in your onboarding settings, when people join your server, there's just simple questions you can ask them. And you can ask them like quite simply, what games do you play? And you offer like a list of checkboxes. And when they check those boxes, you can assign that to a role and they get access to that role. And now forever, that user on your server is going to be attached to that role. So say, Johnny likes Pokemon, Magic, and Lorcana. He checks those boxes. And then every time you have like a Lorcana release or you're putting pre-orders up or there's a new event that you're announcing for Lorcana, you can tag Lorcana on your server, and then it'll only notify the people that care about that. That's kind of it. The 201 version of that is because we have so many games at our stores. If you join some Discords that have a lot of games, all of those channels will be unlocked to you, and you'll have like pages and pages of channels that you can see, and it's really hard to feel caught up with that. So what we do is we have all of our categories are hidden behind like private channels, and by being a member of that role, it unlocks that channel. I'm kind of getting into the weeds, but there's a way to set up your server in a way that your role unlocks the channels. So by checking the box that you care about Magic, it unlocks all those Magic channels for all the formats, or maybe plays people to talk, show their polls from pre-release, or just talk in general chat for Magic. And so the onboarding settings, making sure roles are set up on your server by game. And then kind of the next level of that, if you have a lot of different games in your stores, you can set up private channels that only become visible when you've actually selected like, hey, I care about Pokemon, so I want to see Pokemon. Where sometimes you jump into a Discord server and you're like, wow, there's so much here and I don't even know where to begin. So, but there's some nuance there, and I'm at some point I'll have a video up about kind of how we set up ours. But if anyone has questions about that, I'd be happy to field them.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting to see your video on that, to get your take, more in depth about what your whole process is with that. I really think the tagging thing is actually genius. It lets you know what types of products, what customers are going to want. So definitely valuable information on your side of things.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
From your 3 stores, how do you differentiate between the 3? Like, do you have them? I know I alluded to it a little bit earlier. Are they all congruent in terms of look and feel, or do you have distinct layouts? If you want to describe the layouts of the store to somebody who hasn't been there before.
Yeah, so they're kind of all different. Like if you were to do a tour of the 3 stores, it's kind of a different layer of survival at each one. So our first flagship store in Fountain Valley is actually, arguably looks the worst. Not even arguably, it looks the worst. It doesn't have air conditioning. It's in a warehouse in a commercial district. It has a lot of charm, and the community really likes it for the fact that it's been there for so long, and so many people learned how to play games in that building. So there's it's kind of like a legacy of Kingslayer is at that store, but it's not. If I was to design a store, I wouldn't intentionally design a store specifically in that way ever again. It just kind of it was a necessity of survival. Yeah, so Fountain Valley is in a warehouse. Our second store that we built about 3 years ago is in Oceanside, is in a retail center, and that has a lot more of like the standard things you would expect with, it's got vinyl flooring and matching tables and chairs, and the more intentional furniture and design. And then our newest store, which is Lake Forest, was really a bare bones build out from scratch. And so I did the flooring myself, which I'll never do that again. But I did the flooring myself. We had to level the floor, paint it, did the base floor, the molding, and that store is really intentionally how I wanted our game stores to look and feel. So if anyone's curious and looking at the photos on our Instagram page or Google or what have you, you'll look at Lake Forest and be like, wow, that's amazing. And if you look at Fountain Valley, you're like, oh, interesting choice of, decor. It's like, well, that's because that's what that was like our survival phase. And at some point we'd love to, if we were to upgrade a store, our Fountain Valley store, we'd maybe look at staying in Fountain Valley, but finding a spot that was, retail and a little bit more, has air conditioning and that sort of thing. But yeah, they're kind of all like different levels of duct taping it together to survive, if that makes sense. And Lake Forest is like the polished version of that.
And with 3 stores, I mean, you have plenty of opportunity and space to hold multiple events. And I saw on your website, you have stuff going on at all 3 locations every day. Is there multiple events going on at the same time? How do you manage the gameplay of that? And is it in a competitive environment or is it more casual?
It's mostly we would refer to as like performance-based pricing is what we would consider a version of competitive. So whenever there's an entry fee and then you get more pricing based on your results, we just call it performance-based pricing. And so then that's just inherently competitive. And some stores will have multiple events depending on their cap. Like Digimon for us at Lake Forest is like always between 8 and 14 players, but like never really more than 14. So we know like, okay, we can reserve that many seats and then run that on the same night as another event like Lorcana or something. And then the games that always cap are that then it'll be a one night event. So it really depends on the game and the store, and every store the scene is a little bit different, but I'd say 7 or 8 of our card games are played at all stores, and then some are only at a certain location just because that area has that community, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And do you have WPN Premium in any of those stores?
No, I don't think it's worth it for us. And we looked at it at our first store when we only had one, and what they wanted for the payoff wasn't worth our time. And then subsequently at each other store, it just doesn't. There's too much going on for me anyways, with how many games that we offer that to do. One of the things I didn't like was there's a sales reporting requirement, and they may have gotten rid of this, but at least they had it for the longest time. They wanted us to send sales data every month, which I didn't really care about the transparency of that. I just was like, that was another thing I was gonna have to do every month. And I was like, yeah, no, it's fine. And the benefits are, the store locator looks nicer, and I think they might give you some extra perks and swag and exclusive product. But I think maybe it's worth it for us to spend the time on Lake Forest at some point in time. I just know I was turned off, but based on the number of things they wanted us to change, it was like, I don't like. We quite literally almost spent about $15,000 remodeling and doing a full like AC and remodel at our Fountain Valley store, like 2 months before COVID, to become premium. And I was like, thank God I didn't, because I would have just spent, everything we had to go premium just to be closed for a year would have been brutal. But yeah, I think for some stores it's worth it. For us, it didn't make sense. I think we could still like maximize most of our Magic revenue without having to go that route.
Sure, that's completely understandable. And I did notice on your website, though, what you offer for customers is you have a rewards program. If you could talk a little bit about that, I thought that was a unique touch.
Yeah, so we've got I guess there's a few different ways to run a point of sale solution for local game stores, and we use a system called Lightspeed, and we also use a program in there called Lightspeed Loyalty. It's their loyalty program, and you get points based on how many dollars you spend. And once you hit $1,000 spent, then you're permanently a VIP and you earn double points. And it doesn't reset. Like once you spend 1,000, you're like forever earning 2 points. And the math ends up being about 4% back. So you accumulate points, you convert those straight into dollars off your sale, and it's like a 4% kickback essentially. So that's people really like that. We've had we do like at times we've done different like birthday incentives or bounce back incentives through that loyalty program. But it was really it was great because it was already integrated in our point of sale software. We didn't have to use like a separate application to track it. And yeah, it's just another way to kind of incentivize people. If you have a choice where you're going to pre-order product from, that sort of thing, you can do it. You can get that kickback.
I like it a lot. I think it's great customer incentive. And another thing that you're doing that I think is quite unique too is any singles that are ordered online, if I'm understanding correctly, you ship them for free.
Sure. Correct. Yeah. So there's a few different business rules that we set up. Generally, like free shipping is $130 or more, gives you the free freight. But for singles, that's like disabled essentially. So any singles that you order ship for free. And so we've got mostly Magic and Pokemon singles is like the vast majority of what we have on there. But yeah.
This episode of The Match Slip is sponsored by Crash City Con, Roanoke, Virginia's premier gaming and fan convention. It's tabletop gaming at its best. In addition to role-playing games, board games, there are vendors and so much more. Play with some of the top game masters in the area, enjoy a casual game in their open gaming area, or learn to play games you always wanted to play. Attend Crash City Con August 23rd through the 25th of 2024 at the Berglund Center Special Events Center. You could check out more information at crashcitycon.com.
Is that where the majority of sales, you would say, like in terms of profit, comes from? Is the singles when as compared to say the sealed product?
I think there's been times where singles were more important, but really or dominant. I'd say, like especially when you really laser focus in on a certain game and you're building. Like when we were very much a Magic store before COVID, and a lot of our stuff was like you'd be cracking new product to sell singles or buying and selling and really aggressively advertising that more. And now it's kind of transitioned more towards sealed product. And because of games like One Piece and Lorcana and the profit margins being reasonable, you don't have to. We buy and sell singles in the stores all the time, every day, but it's not something that we have to. We could always lean on it better, and it's probably something we could work on to establish better. But I'd say the vast majority of our revenue and profits come from accessories, sealed, and events.
Okay, that's interesting to hear. I'm guessing it's probably also because to where you are at with the business financially, that it probably isn't as, say, a piece of revenue that is demanded upon and needed that, say, a smaller store might need.
Yeah, I think that it's great for the players, and yeah, the smaller store. I think you're right. Does need to focus on singles a little bit more to generate revenue, and that ends up being another problem at scale. How do you scale a singles business for 10 different games in 3 different stores? Like you kind of just don't. Like you still have your processes of buying and selling singles for the in-store customer to sell in the case, and then sometimes the ones that don't sell in the case we sell out on TCG Player. So there's a mechanism there, and there's a loop that we want closed for the way that the ecosystem of buying and selling singles exists in our workflow. But it's really hard to have a great single selection or even a good single selection for so many games in so many stores. So that ends up being, if we had one mega store and did 10 games, we could really laser focus and say, we really want to have great single selection on these 5 games. And so that way people come in that play Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever the game example is, are really impressed with the singles selection. But you just don't have the time or the resources when you start hitting scale, and unfortunately. But I think there's probably there's a case to be made. We could put up I could run some data points and see like, well, if we did focus this much on singles for Lorcana, like, would it be profitable to hire a person to manage that part of the business and do the online part? Maybe, but then it's like the lowest hanging fruit. Like, well, what's the most impact we could make versus, there's a lot of ways to make money in the industry, from like 3D printing to content to what. And I think for us, it's like identifying, okay, what's the most effective right now, and that's where we've kind of all transitioned from wargaming to things like Yu-Gi-Oh to whatever the next obstacle is.
No, it makes sense. You're deciding, what to focus on based on what's top of mind at that time, depending upon what's most profitable and what works well for your store. Completely makes sense.
Correct.
So one of the final questions I have is related to your open play space that you mentioned on Saturdays. It seems like it runs at your store.
Yeah, that's getting like less than open play is getting more and more fought over, I think. But yeah, go for it. What's the question?
So I'm just curious, is like, I always know that is something that players really like to have. And, from what you just brought up about the difficulty with now trying to manage that, is it just too many different games of just open play, or is it, the sheer amount of customers you have, it's like the math is almost over exceeding itself?
Yeah. So we keep adding more. There's just more games that come out, and then we keep adding, and there's more communities that want to play those games. So like Dragon Ball Fusion World this year is starting to grow, is the next thing. And then Union Arena, Bandai's like newest game that's coming out in October. There's people that want to play that game. So we just end up, there's more players that want to play different games than we have kind of time slots and space for. And that ends up being a little bit of an issue. But it's we have like for whenever there's open space, which we open at 11 at all three stores, and then our events don't start till about 6. So like there's open table space, it's free. There's no table fee or anything. And it's all first come first serve. And then on days, Saturdays and Sundays generally can end up being more open play than others. And then that's the same thing. It's first come first serve. You just go on Discord and go into the town hall channel for that store, or call the store and say, hey, do you have room for this? And then we reserve that table for you. There's no, like I said, no fees. It ends up getting lately, specifically in the last couple of weekends, that we even our open play is hitting capacity, and then running in with like the more events that we add on. So it's a constant maneuvering to make sure we've got as much space as possible. And we, you hadn't asked this, but this might paint a picture of our stores a little bit better. Because we're in California, and because of the way that I've grown the stores, I pick store locations that we can afford to lease, and so our footprint is really small. So our stores are on average about 1,400 square feet, which is, you can do 30 to 40 players in that space, but it ends up being tight. We don't have the luxury of having like a 3,000 square foot space at any of our stores. So we have to be really efficient with the space that we use. So each store has a couple glass cases, has product all over the walls around the 4 walls, and then we just min max our space for seating it. And it's comfortable enough to work, but it's not it's not going to be a 3,000 or 5,000 square foot giant store that just has like loads of space.
Yeah, that would be quite the task to undertake, to have that many stores, and all of them being that sheer large of a size. So it seems like what you're doing is working really well for you. So that's great to see.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I've just got the team. The team is great, and the store managers are awesome, and they make all of it happen.
That's awesome. And my final question for you, Travis, is, what do you feel is something that is unique about your store that may not be seen at another store? And in conjunction, that 2-part question, what is something you're looking towards for the future?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier with how we hire. Being kind is so important. It's one of our values. We have an oath that's on the wall at all of our stores that goes over how to behave in victory and defeat, and how that we putting kindness first is something that we have to strive to do at all times. And I think that's where people will have experiences in other stores across the country or across their lives, and they'll have a medium or negative experience. And when they come to Kingslayer and they realize, like, wow, the staff really cares about my experience, we have a thing in our onboarding and a thing we ask our staff to do. We call it the kindness question. So as opposed to someone walks in and just says like, they come in and you say, hey, how you doing? They say hi or whatever. Then you bring them up and they leave. We try to go at least a step beyond that to ask them like something about their life that maybe they weren't expected to be asked that day. Like, oh, what kind of work are you in? Like it really opens up like a nice conversation to have while they're browsing singles, or, you doing anything fun this weekend, or you playing any fun video games lately? Or, these are people that are, they're here to have a good time and enjoy. And if we can show kindness to them, it plants the seeds for, oh, this isn't really a retail store. It's kind of a community that sells stuff. And that ends up being really, I think that ends up being different than most retail experiences, not just game stores. It's just our staff really cares about getting to know the people to try to get them into our communities, to our Discord, to see what card games and wargaming and board games and D&D, like what that has to offer someone that just looking for, maybe a temporary escape from their 9 to 5, or just a way to kind of connect with people outside of their current social circle. So I think that's what if we put that forward and we lead with that, everything else just kind of falls into place. And that's what we've experienced over the last number of years. The content stuff has been really fun. So the experiment of Twitch and YouTube has been really cool because it's opened up quite literally opened up this conversation, and about a half a dozen others that I have in line to do podcast and content work with myself, including doing some coaching for new stores and future stores, and helping them go through that process. So just really enjoying that and having some expertise to be able to help stores if it serves them in some way. I think that's really cool. So I'm looking forward to that kind of personally, to helping other people go through and maybe not make some of the same mistakes that I did. I think just seeing the growth of our community over the last number of months, really since Lake Forest opened, has been really, really cool. And I feel much more connected to them than I had in a long time. Our Lake Forest build out took 6 months, and I was basically the contractor for that whole period of time. So I was really unplugged from community stuff, and so I feel like really present with the business right now. So I'm looking forward to continuing that this year.
That's great, man. I'm really glad to hear that. And so as we wrap up here, is there anywhere you'd like anybody to go and follow the store? Anything you want to share as we close out?
Yeah, so you can, if you're on Discord, you can just, we're searchable on there. So you can search for Kingslayer Games on Discord. Let's see. So our YouTube channel is just Kingslayer Games. You can check out the content I've been publishing on there. Instagram, same thing. I mean, basically all the standard places that you'd expect to find a game store, we're going to be there. But I'd say for like personal development, or if you have any questions or goals on opening your own store, or you're struggling with something when it comes to marketing or what have you, you can always you can find me on Twitter at TravisYoung12, or send me an email. It's just travis@kingslayergames.com. And I'd be happy to help in any way that I can, or set up a call. And I'm kind of enjoying this chapter and helping people out right now.
Perfect. And I'll be sure to put a link in the show notes so that people can get in touch with the store, get in touch with you. Travis, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been a blast having you on and hearing about your store.
Awesome. Hey, appreciate the time, Frank.
My pleasure. And for everybody else listening, if you'd like to check out the game stores and hear my reviews about the places I go to in person, you could do so at thematchlip.com/newsletter. Again, you can also watch the episode of the podcast on YouTube. Just search for The Match Slip. You could find us there. And with that being said, we'll catch you in the next episode. Take care.